Okay, I guess I'm starting. Um, yep. Gonna go ahead and continue work on an Imperial Fist Captain because I really want this character model to be pretty. He's going to essentially be my chapter master, I think. So he's gonna lead my Imperial Fists alongside Rogel Dorn and Torgaradon. I'm also going to upgrade at some point. But right now, just gonna go ahead and work on this guy. Hope that he turns out okay. So, I guess kind of the good news about it is that he is my own thing. I don't have any more commissions to do right now. I don't have anything else that really needs to be done. It's just purely for my enjoyment of the hobby. So let's see how this goes. I'm going to go ahead and hit a lot of his red trim first. Actually, I think since he's going to be, what colors? I think I'm going to make his cloak and his little skirt red as well. So that's where I think I'm going to go with that coloring. Let's see how this goes. We're going to go down to a 0 brush for now. I probably should get a new one because this one has completely lost its tip, which I suppose is fine, but I'll just work with it for now. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's trying to autofocus everything because this thing wants to play bad pool. There we go. That should be good. I don't need an autofocus. I need you to stay still. Okay. A little bit of black. That's all I really need. It's just enough so that this is a dark red. Build this back up to a proper light red with proper highlights as I continue working on the model. Yeah, as weird as it sounds, it feels real good to be done with all my commissions. I enjoyed doing them, they were a lot of fun, but they were incredibly stressful because I really wanted to get that money and those bills paid, right? I mean, to be honest, the bigger commission was going to help pay for a Christmas present for my wife. So having all of that money set in stone and paid off, is knowing that it's going to be mine, very reassuring. I'm just going to use this darker color to fill in the cloak behind, underneath, since it's all going to be in shadow anyway. And hopefully I'm able to get enough of it that it reads. Okay. Not the best thing for the brush tip, but you know. No deal. And the edge of the cloak. And again, this is all just going to be shadow, so I'm not too worried about whether or not it's going to be an especially thick layer, given that this black red is going to cover quite well the yellow of the cloak. Okay. 10 more parts red. 1 more part black. Back in. We're gonna hit the outside of the cloak, I suppose. I'm pretty darn excited to work on this guy. I got to paint one part of the commission, which you guys saw on screen. So, given that he just needed to be tabletop ready, I did what I would call a good job on him, but not a great job. And so now getting the opportunity to paint one of my own to make him look really, really good, put a lot of time and effort into him, that excites me. Because I'm going to try and paint him beyond tabletop standard. Which, to be honest, has kind of become my goal in life with these guys, is I've already painted an army to tabletop standard. It's like, that was fine, that was good, it was nice getting there, but whenever I'd look at my models, it'd be like, there's a little bit left to be desired. I could do better. So, my new goal has been to try and paint everything to either tabletop plus or higher standard, so that I can really show off my models whenever I play a game of one-page rules or Warhams. I mean, it's just going to make it that much worse when I get blown off the table, because the Imperial Fists are just not very good in either. In one-page rules, they're just standard battle brothers. They don't get any special rules or anything. And in proper Warhammer 9th edition, they are dead last in terms of like competitive wins across tournaments and the like, and they have been for pretty much all of the current edition that I've been playing. So it's like, well, I'll just wait for the fists to get good, I guess. My understanding is that with the new codex that's coming out, the new updates for Space Marines, that the Imperial Fist should be getting a little bit of a bump with Gravis armor, which is the big, heavy, chonky armor that I really like, and that it should make them a lot more intimidating to play against. It's one of those things of like, that's cool, we'll see how that goes. I hope it works well, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm not expecting them to suddenly be world beaters or to be, you know, one of the best chapters in the book or anything, or in the army faction. There we go. I just want them to not suck anymore. But I suppose personally, can't complain too much. I have a lot of fun playing them. I kind of like their stubborn defense thing. I kind of like the fact that they rely so heavily on the humble bolter. I like my yellow boys. Get that the really dark maroon. Get some nice clean lines there. And we're going to build all of that back up. Right. Even though I really don't need to, I think I'm also going to do this on shoulder pad, which is eventually going to be red like Third Company. So, again, not entirely necessary because it's almost entirely going to be covered by the eventual bright red I'm going to be using. But I think it'll help sell the shadows if I get to those. Now, something I was going to try and do, since honestly, as much as I love the bolt gun, I hate the bolt rifle, which I've talked about before. I just don't like how it looks and how extended it is. I think it looks a little silly and generic. I was originally going to cut it off and switch it out with a Custodes bolt gun, but then I found out that the gun is actually like attached to his hip. When they made the model, they just straight up had it so that this part was contiguous with the rest of the model. So it's just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not doing that. Okay. Well, that just did. I'm going to go ahead and do that across the entire thing to try and bring some continuity there. Okay, one moment. I have to blow my nose. I was perfectly fine, and then I came down here and sneezed twice, and now I've got allergies again. I'll be right back. Okie dokie, I'm back. So, got all of the red parts painted how I want them. I actually should get out some of that Imperial Fist yellow that I've been using. Every one of them have been done in Averland Sunset, and that's kind of my plan. I'm just going to keep doing stuff in Averland Sunset and hope that it turns out okay. So, I think in this case, though, I'm going to lose a little bit of the value here because when I first, yep, see immediately way brighter than what I want. And that's okay, I suppose. The original coding was to give myself an idea of where all the shadows were supposed to lie. So the fact that this is all kind of turning into this weird bright yellow in comparison to the original base coat is fine. I'll go back and I'll fix this later because I do plan on doing a lot of shading and blending to really sell shadow and the light. The fact that right now it's kind of turning into this weird issue where I'm overpainting on top of another color is going to be okay. Really sucks because the overspray that I did gave it some really nice shadows and some really nice depth of color, which is all about to get lost. But like I said, I'm going to get to practice my blending, so it'll all be okay in the long run. That, and hopefully I'm putting these layers on thin enough that they're not actually going to bother or color underneath. Let's see what else I can do here. Clean those back up. Besides, I need to hit some spots anyway. I didn't realize I missed a mold line there, so the mold line is completely shown through. So I had to go through and actually eliminate it entirely. Scrape it off. Fortunately, I think I've left some rogue paint chips in there. Let's get rid of that. I also think that I went down to bare plastic, and so it's going to show through on this sculpt, which is bad. So I guess it's going to have to be entirely painted over anyway. Now, I guess the next thing I really should think about is, do I want to make all of his Aquillas and accoutrements red, or do I just want to go with... No, I think I am going to go ahead and make his other Aquillas and accoutrements red, because this would be the only gold piece on him, and that feels weird. So, we're going to go ahead and make this a red as well. I think hands down one of my favorite things about the Horus Heresy books is one of the things that kind of brings it down as a series of books. The prose in it is generally pretty good, nothing fantastic. Sometimes they reach and they get some really great lines and some really memorable moments, but by and large, it's okay. Like, it's solid, it does the job it needs to do, and it sounds appropriately dramatic and maudlin at the right moments. But my favorite thing is that since, you know, it's a book about a series of miniatures, and the lore is very much beholden to that, a lot of moments are interrupted by the incredible need to insert proper nouns from the board game, or from the tabletop game. So, an important character's armor is never just his armor, it's his master-crafted artificer armor, and things like that. And that stuff always just kind of brings me out of the world for a second. Like, did you really have to explain that it was that specific relic from the tabletop game? And I guess the answer is yes. But it always struck me as funny that in the midst of a very elaborate description of prose, we get random product placement here. And I get it. Gotta sell models, all that stuff. I think one of my favorite things I've heard about 40K was they had... my goodness, what was the guy's name? I cannot remember his name, but he wrote some of the first books of the 40K world. And he's kind of infamous because of it. Because the books themselves did not age well. They're very gonzo and very strange because they take very fast liberties with what's become incredibly established 40K lore. And it's not because of him, if you know what I mean. He was given a manual of, this is the lore of 40K. Here is what we have. Here are the manuals we have. Make a story based off of this information, right? and he did the best he could, and he made a very strange, very, I guess we'll call it exciting story for when it came out, which was the late 80s, early 90s. But like by today's standards, it reads very poorly. It has some issues. And Inquisitor Draco is the name of the story. And he apparently did an interview about 10 years ago where he talked about the experience of writing those books. And it was it was a very nice interview. They were throwing him softballs, and they were just trying to get him to talk because they were interested in what he had to say as one of the first writers of the Black Library. And in general, his books sold well. Like, they were well liked. People enjoyed them. And people wanted them because they were, good for the era. But one of the biggest problems with the books is that Games Workshop was not happy with the sales. And it wasn't an issue of he's not selling enough or that it's not making enough money. It's that it was making too much money, and they wanted people to spend that money on miniatures. And so for some reason in Games Workshop's mind, people wouldn't do both. You know what I mean? They wouldn't read those books and be like, oh man, I really want to buy the miniatures of the things they talk about in those books. In Games Workshop's mind, it was always, if they put a $15 book on the shelf next to a $30 box of minis, people were gonna buy the book and ignore the minis. And so they got incredibly salty about this, and they just stopped selling his books. They kept saying there was no room on the shelves, and they stopped producing them, which I think is incredibly funny because the Black Library has become such a crucial part of the game itself now, with establishing the lore and giving a lot of the events in the board game and in the tabletop game. Yeah, that's something I didn't know too much about because, I entered the hobby really late, but that is really silly, isn't it? I mean, you're part of the same company. Why are you competing with each other? They have now. I mean, you're probably better aware of this than I am, but they definitely have started to realize that mistake, and they do have miniatures now. Good afternoon. I haven't checked my email since I sent it out, Red, but I sent out your package yesterday. I used the cheapest shipping that I could, first class, international, or whatever, so it ended up being like $30. But hopefully it'll get to you within 6 to 10 days. I'm glad to have that done. I put an inventory list in there too, so hopefully you can check off everything that was sent in that package. But yeah, I mean, like, they definitely have started to make awesome. I hope that gets to you quicker. I really hope it's there before you know it. They have started doing like character series from the novels and whatnot. And I greatly appreciate that, obviously, because one of my favorite things about the 40K universe is the lore. Like, when I'm playing the game, I'm trying to replicate in my head, or what I see in my head from the books, because they give such great context for everything that's going on the tabletop. Though I will say the proliferation of character models, while super neat, detracts from the game as far as I'm concerned. I really like the feel of you create your own characters, you create your own lore, because all of these battles are happening simultaneously in different sectors, and it's all unverifiable. Yeah, I appreciate it. To be honest, after fees and everything, it wasn't too much. I believe it was like a $30 shipping cost, and then the STLs were $15. So if I ran Games Workshop at the same time, Dark Tide launched a release class meetings where you could build the rejects from the game. They've done something similar to that with McFarlane Toys. They're not exactly, build a reject, but they do have like Trader Guardsmen they've released, and they're probably working on creating actual models of the 4 heroes. So who knows? But yeah, Red, I think it ended up being like $10 extra, which I definitely appreciate, don't get me wrong. Because you essentially covered fees and materials. So thank you again. I do appreciate it. And I hope that those models are what you're looking for quality-wise. I know I'm not a bigger name 3D printer like, oh my gosh, Atlas Forge and whoever they're partnered with, but hopefully it'll be good enough for your tabletop needs. But yeah, I mean, it would definitely make sense to have, you know, rejects come out at the same time that tie in with it. I do kind of wonder if their business model projected that that game would be as popular as it was, because I'm pretty sure that what you call it, Fat Shark and Games Workshop. Oh, 40K minis, yeah, that is true. Well, I think it's really funny that Games Workshop seems to have a real strong proclivity to not want to do that, because like, haven't they gone on record for saying that they don't want to make a computer game analog for 40K because they think it'll detract from people buying the minis or getting into the physical game? And it's like, you guys are stupid. But that's why they've never made like a one-to-one of 40K for the computer or for the video game, because they don't want it to give people an excuse to not actually buy the miniatures. And it's like, what are you doing? That's how people get into it. They get like that $60, $40, whatever free taste, and then like, man, this is freaking awesome. I want to do this with real figures, and I want to make my own army, not just play the ones that they have available here. And then people buy into it. It's the same with Magic the Gathering. I know that's obviously a different ecosystem, but like Magic Arena brought so many people into the hobby, simply by dint of it being a free way to get into the game and give people a taste of what makes the game so great. So I don't know what Games Workshop is thinking. I don't know who runs it. I don't know the personalities in the hobby like I do with Magic the Gathering, because I was in that hobby for considerably longer. But it really does feel like they're just kind of shooting themselves in the foot in a lot of ways. And who knows, they might actually be in the process of doing something like this, because the video games they've been making have been of considerably higher quality. And so maybe they've got something down the pipeline that we're just not aware of. Because it feels like these games are a result of the funding that came about either right around the pandemic or right before the pandemic, because, you know, the development cycles and yada, yada, yada. So mayhaps they do have something special lined up, and we just don't know about it. Oh, goodness. Who knows? There was a Hasbro investor call the other said that 40K tie-in and bringing new people into space. I have to see the opposite is true too. Yes. I don't know as much about that. I know that the 40K decks were specifically made to be better than a typical Commander pre-constructed deck. I have one of them, and I built another one out of the Mortarion from the Chaos one. I have a friend who got 2 of them or 3 of them, and I know that there's definitely interest, but I actually don't know how many more people were drawn into the hobby that were 40K fans. I know, right? Space Marine 2 looks absolutely amazing. I am obscenely excited for that game. My hope is that they kind of do what they did for Darktide, and the computer settings for that game can be chunked way down, because I have a friend who's in kind of the same situation as you, where he can't afford a new computer. Apparently, being a bus driver in the United States is not enough money to spend on things other than rent and food. But he really wanted to play Darktide because he's big into 40K too, and he really loves Space Marine like we love Space Marine. And when I started gushing about Darktide, showing him footage, he's like, man, I gotta play this game. And yeah, I know, right? And so I was like, you know what? Here's what we can do. And I happen to have a computer I bought in like 2015. It was essentially a gaming computer. It was like $1,500 at the time. And I was like, I'm not using it anymore. I'll just give it to you, and maybe it can play Darktide at its lowest settings. And I looked at the system requirements online, and it looked like it was actually just a tick below what Darktide needed, which was a 970, I think, because it was a 970M, which was the mobile version. It was like the last mobile graphics card before they just started making the graphics cards small enough that they fit in laptops, right? And with the settings on low, he's actually able to play the damn thing. Like, it runs apparently well enough for him to play it smoothly. And then I think someone created a Darktide potato mode where they actually lowered the graphics even further and made it so that the game was playable with even inferior computers. So I've got a friend in Michigan who wants to play, but his computer was a step down from my old one. But I think with Darktide potato mode, he should be able to play it. So hopefully they'll have something similar done with Space Marine too, where the game, obviously, I mean, if you look at the screenshots of the videos, that game is going to need a very powerful PC or whatever to run it. But hopefully, with the settings down low, it'll be able to run on like a potato. That's my hope, at least. But yeah, thankfully, because of the 3D printer, I can kind of focus on doing those kind of things. I recently got a gaming laptop a couple years ago because A, I wanted a new laptop, and B, we were rendering Puppet videos at the time. I think I might have talked about this before. And my old gaming laptop was just too slow with rendering. It would take anywhere between a half hour to an hour and a half, depending on the length and complexity of the video. And for our needs, that just wasn't fast enough. And so I got a tax return. And I was like, you know what? I'm spending this on getting a new computer. And my main goal at the time was I wanted to be powerful enough to run Cyberpunk 2077. And it's strong enough now to run Darktide on medium settings, which is amazing to me. But it's definitely helped with playing that game. It's the only reason I can. Okay. I will say, one of the most annoying things about trying to get better with the painting and whatnot is that you can't just kind of get better at painting. You have to start learning a whole bunch of other things. Like, since I'm trying to really sell this guy's cloak, I really should know more about light placement and dark and light shadows and whatnot. But since I'm an imbecile, I'm going to struggle a bit with that, like where I need to place the highlights and where I need to place the lowlights. And obviously, Games Workshop does a good job of making their stuff readable. They've got very clear, like, folds in the cloak that you're supposed to follow. But light's obviously more complex than that, so I can't just follow those blindly and hope he turns out okay. But yeah, I think I'm really happy that Darktide seems to be a runaway success for Fat Shark and for Games Workshop, because it's bringing a lot of new people into the hobby. It's obviously just a good game, not perfect, clearly, but it does enough things right that people outside of the hobby are interested in it. And my hope is just that it continues to draw more people in. I think one of my favorite things being on YouTube is that there's a lot of people that do those really kind of goofy reaction videos where they happen to be a specialist in some other field, like composers or doctors or whatever. My youngest let down his shoes. It's like Metal Slug with horse. Yeah, that game's great. Shooter's Blood and Teeth is a great example of like the new design philosophy they have, I guess, where instead of it just being a carbon copy of X game with a 40K skin on top of it, the developers clearly understood the assignment and clearly loved the hobby, because they managed to fit so many little sly references that didn't need to be there, right? Like the bit with the Imperial Knight where they have the pilot, I'm sorry, I don't remember the names of these things, announce himself, and he does so in the most pretentious way possible, where he gives every one of his names, and then the orc just kind of gets bored and starts yawning, and then when he finishes, he's just like, what? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's pretty clear that the new generation of developers aren't just there for the shovelware. Kind of like in the early mid 2000s with Dawn of War when that first came out. Those people clearly cared and clearly had a lot of fun making that game. My only problem with Shooters Blood and Teeth is that it does feel kind of rough around the edges. The fact that there is no scene there when a map ends, it just kind of suddenly stops because it's over. Just little goofy things like that make it rough around the edges. But yeah, I mean, they got games like that. They got games like Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, which is a fantastic tactical game that clearly sells the world. And I think my favorite thing about it is because obviously different companies are making these, even though they have something of a design Bible from Games Workshop, they clearly have their own interpretations of how the world looks and how characters interact. And it's always got kind of a standard to go off of, but there's little differences, like the Mechanicus in every game is just ever so slightly different with how they behave and how their technology works and how their voices sound and all of that stuff. And I really appreciate that because it makes the world, to some people would argue it makes the world feel a little bit contradictory or unrefined, but I think it just makes the world feel more varied because it just shows how up to the owners, the creators, the lore works, right? Maybe not the best explanation, but I just love the flexibility of it, because obviously there's established canon. There's very clearly established things that's true across the games, but the way they're kind of presented is different enough that they all have their own flavor. Like the tech priest in Chaos Gate Demon Hunters is not at all like the tech priests in and the Magos in Mechanicus, right? Which, by the way, that game was such a great herald of things to come. I know turn-based strategy isn't everyone's bag, and I know that it can get tiring seeing these attempts at 40k type turn-based strategy, but I really feel like with the design philosophy, they absolutely nailed the Mechanicus in that game. The way that they talk to each other, the way that they sound, it was a revelation for me, and it really made me dig the Mechanicus. And same with games like Shooters Blood and Teeth. Like, very clearly that game shows the orcs at their best, where they're very goofy and silly and still very violent, but it's portrayed in such a way that it's very benign, you know? And meanwhile, you have like the original thing is stuff like Mechanics and just one thing. They're huge organizations. Exactly. And that's the best part. The world's so huge and so sprawling that each version is valid, right? Because like in pretty much every game that's not Mechanicus, they don't speak in that binary cant, right? And it's because they're having to interact with non-Mechanicus. They're having to interact with you know, regular humans. And so they clearly have adjusted their speech patterns. But when they're alone, when they just have to interact with each other, they can do that. And so the fact that none of them speak in English or High Gothic or whatever you want to call it in Mechanicus doesn't contradict the rest of the world. Someone can be like, hey, I played Mechanicus and yeah, they talk funny. That's not how they're supposed to talk. They're supposed to just have a technological lilt to their voices like they do in Darktide or like they do in Chaos Gate. It's like, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong, but they're also talking to other people. They're translating what they're saying. So it all still works. And I think that that's beautiful. I think that that is an incredible thing that they can do that you don't see in a lot of other intellectual properties, you know? And as long as they never become brazenly hypocritical or contradictory with their lore, I think all these games can, well, they obviously can because they do, but I love that all these games can kind of coexist in the same space. I think that that's one of the coolest things in the world about the 40k, is that all of that stuff works. But yeah, like the orcs in Shooters Blood and Teeth, they're very silly. It's portrayed in a very like Metal Slug cartoony way, right? And I think it sells so well because that's how the orcs see themselves. They're silly, they're goofy, they just want a good time. But then you have like the Kill Team trailer, where those exact same things, the squigs, the shootas, all those, they are absolutely terrifying. And again, both interpretations work because one is clearly from the perspective of the orcs, and the other is clearly from the perspective of the Krieg that are fighting them, right? And so just the fact that there's such an incredibly varied interpretation of the everything in 40K is what makes it fantastic. At least to me. I don't know if you guys agree with that, or if there are people out there that agree with that, but it's easily one of my favorite things about the world, about the universe. Okay, let's see, how high up can I push this? I probably ought to start adding some oranges to really bring the highlights of this up. One of the things I liked about Star, you showed them running into an unknown alien space with unknown chaos or coas artifact. Part of the 40K game is that you always run into stuff you know. In the real universe, yeah, exactly. Astartes was beautiful for so many reasons, and that's a really good, important one, is that because they didn't rely on intense exposition, and because they didn't really rely on you having a deep knowledge of the game, there was a lot of show, don't tell. And so there was just as much mystery and menace to the things they were trying to deal with as there was, you know, just the bolter porn of getting to see Astartes do Astartes things. Yeah. Really? Wait. Space Hulk Deathwing, right? I felt like, from what I heard, I never got to play the game in multiplayer because I acquired it, not legally, and then deleted it because I wasn't having much fun. But I had always heard that game is a blast on multiplayer, but it's the absolute drizzling shits on single player because the AI is dumb as hell. And, it just kind of loses some of that deft touch that playing with multiple people gives. Like, aesthetically, my understanding was that Space Hulk was really, really pretty for its time. Which I agreed. When I played it, it was beautiful. And it was unlike anything I'd ever seen in a video game in terms of just the design of the ships and the Space Hulks and the yada yada. But my biggest thing with it was that nothing felt impactful. Everything kind of felt floaty, and I don't know, I didn't feel like a Terminator chomping through the world. I felt like a guy in chunkier armor slowly wading his way through very floaty aliens with a garden hose. I think that's something they've greatly improved on in the more recent games, is the feel of the weapons, because like when I hit something with a bolter in Darktide, it feels like I just hit them with an explosive cartridge, and watching them burst into nuts. Watching things react to getting hit with a bolter in the newer games, it just feels right, you know what I mean? And it's something that I really enjoy about the new games, is after playing Space Hulk Deathwing, seeing how far 40K development has come with their video games. You mean the campaign isn't... Actually, I wouldn't know. The campaign isn't multiplayer is very disappointing, because I was trying to get friends to play that for a while, but it's not a particularly well-made game. Rogue Trader, one of their main jobs was to find human civilizations and was evolved in all sorts of ways. That's something I think they should have kept with. I mean, I suppose that's kind of what the Horus Heresy was about in some ways, but that's something they need to do. I would love for them to make a Horus Heresy style game. But, yeah. It definitely is a thing that, very clearly, the video game development of 40K has undergone a great change over the past few years, and it's improved for the better. Because even while there are still very clearly some games that are just shovelware and are just meant to make money by spending as little as possible, they still make some really good games, right? Or they've made some fantastic games. Like even some of their shovelware games are pretty good. From what I understand, the Horus Heresy card game is really good. The mobile game Tacticus, I was addicted to for like a week. Unfortunately, they failed in their attempt to get me to spend money on it. But the art for the game was really good. The gameplay itself was pretty darn solid. It felt like there was real effort put in. But yeah, there are a lot of things about 40K that I can bitch about, but I greatly love the fact that the world itself is getting a lot more love in the form of the video games that are being made for it. Have a good one. I'm only going to be on stream for another few minutes too, because I've got to go to work, but yeah, Tacticus was good enough that it's worth playing for longer than a few minutes, right? I didn't get that far because I eventually realized that it was really taking up some of my time. But I think that they should get kudos for that game because I don't know. I've just watched Wizards try and make card games for Magic on the phone, and it's really sad. That and seeing some of the previous games made by made for Warhammer. It's just like, you guys are trying, and you deserve a thumbs up. Support them where you can, right? But yeah, I would love to have a game where you could make your own custom chapter or play as one of the the major chapters. And I don't know, I think all I really want is I just want a planet side for 40K. Just give me planet side for 40K. That's enough. Give me what Eternal Crusade claimed it was going to give me. Like, that was definitely a game that I found way too early and tried before I understood 40K, and then didn't give two shits about when I realized it was a bad game. And now that I'm all in the 40K lore, I really wish I had spent more time playing Eternal Crusade, even if it was a piece of garbage game. There's a really good breakdown by someone about Eternal Crusade and how that game was a missed opportunity and overpromised and yada yada yada. But I really got into 40K right as that game was shutting down, and I still kind of regret it. But then again, I don't think I could have held two hobbies at the same time like that. Magic and 40K would have made me penniless. Okay, it's 7:37. In a few minutes, I gotta start cleaning up because I need to go do the work. Let's go ahead and give him that orange highlight on top. Just a little smidgen to highlight the cloth. I do say, I understand why they're doing it, because they need to have some kind of shelf recognition poster boy. Oh, I'm not leaving just yet, but I appreciate it. They have to have some kind of shelf recognition, brand recognition for people getting into the hobby. But I really wish they would stop doing Imperial or Space Marine, or dang it, Ultramarine stuff. I'm really tired of seeing the Ultramarines be the poster boys for everything. And I get it. Like I said, I get it. They need to have someone to be the icons of the game, but I'm tired of the Ultramarines. I want Space Marine game where I get to just play as one of the nameless ones. I remember actually a couple days ago, one of my friends has recently gotten into Classic Doom. Like, it was a game he played as a kid. He's a couple years older than me, but he never played it very intently. And now that he's a little older and a little more learned, he's gone back into the retro games and has decided that that's one he wants to play. and he's enjoying the fact that the game is so, you know, sumptuously moddable. And so we were like, there's got to be a 40k mod for this, and lo and behold, there's a 40k mod for Doom. And so he pulled up the 40k mod for Doom, and you can choose which Space Marine chapter you want to be, right? And it'll change the color of your Space Marine armor when you're doing things. And the options for that game are like Blood Angels, Black Templars, Bloodhounds, which I think was just a custom chapter the creator made, and like, I think Dark Angels. And that was it. And all I could think of was, why can't the Imperial Fist get any love? I think I'm a stan who wants to see the Imperial Fist get more recognition. Yeah, there's a big mod for Arma 3. What's his name? Chapter Master Valrak does a lot of goofy shit on there, I think, or used to. And the guys who did If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device also used to play that a lot. I think one of my favorite things from finding out about the Arma 3 mod was getting to see an Exterminatus. But the game obviously is very rough graphically, and that kind of limits my interest. That, and to be honest, even though I am playing a lot of Darktide, I can't do first-person shooters. They make me incredibly nauseous, and it's the rapid-moving camera. Something about it. Well, not something about it. I know what it is. It's like an inner ear problem. I have severe motion sickness issues, and so most first-person shooters, because of how fast you have to be to play against other people, since, you know, there are some that are just really talented, one with the game and all that stuff, I can't do it. It makes me ill. Like, I tried to watch him play Doom, and it almost made me throw up. And that's always been a thing. I've just never been able to do that stuff because of that issue. And it sucks, because I love first-person shooters. They're one of my favorite genres of game. I hit this lightly enough so that it reads. It's just like another fold. Okay. I feel kind of bad saying this, but I very clearly saved all my time and effort for this Primaris Captain, because I did not put this much effort into that client's Primaris Captain. Though admittedly, I also was painting his to tabletop standard, not to parade standard. He wanted new HQs for his new sub-army of fists, so here. That's my excuse I'm gonna give. Okay. And that's the thing, I really like Doom. I think Doom's a great game. I think it was innovative for its time and all that stuff, and when I was a kid, I wanted to play it because it was just like, I get to shoot a million things, and it's cool, and kabooms, but I'd like run through a corridor and like 2 minutes into the game, and my immediate thought was, I'm going to vomit. I'm going to throw up right now. My head is spinning and I feel terrible. And it's still like that. I know that there are supposed to be workarounds and solutions. Like, there are glass frames that have a little bit of liquid in them. And so in the corners of your eyes, at like the edge of your vision, your periphery vision, you can see the liquid kind of floating and bobbing as you move, or it doesn't. It is one of the two things, but the point is it re-tricks your brain into thinking, oh, okay, everything's fine, we're not moving, no matter what the window says. And that's supposed to counteract like the seasickness that you get from playing certain first-person shooters and the like. So there's got to be some way around it. I just don't know it yet. And here, the thing is like Darktide, everything moves slowly enough that doesn't happen. Most of the game is wide open enough that doesn't happen. But I guarantee you, if the game ran at a constant sprint, or if you were constantly in tight corridors, I could not play it. It would just make me violently ill. So yeah, that's been my whole thing with it. And it makes me sad that a huge genre of video games and entertainment is not really in my wheelhouse. Like, I tried to play Necromunda Hired Gun, a great example of that, because Necromunda Hired Gun is straight up that style of game. It was based off of the new Doom games, right? And again, I got like 10 minutes in and I had to turn it off. It made me happy I didn't actually purchase the game. But, yeah, it's one of those things, because I would have loved to play Necromunda. That game is beautiful. Okay, that being said, I like how he's turning out. Obviously, he ain't perfect yet. I got to do some tighter blending, but Cloak looks good. The Aquila is going to be better balanced soon. Oh, I don't know if you were here for it yesterday, but I painted his head. And I'm not putting this on just yet. It's from the Mark VI Marines. And I'm pretty darn happy with how the head turned out. I think he looks appropriately haggard and just done with everything, right? So that's eventually going to be the captain's head. Well, the chapter master's head, once I'm done with it. And I'll attach that later. Come on, focus. There we go. That being said, it's pretty much time for me to go. It's 7:45, so I'm going to head off. I might be back on later on this evening. I don't know. I'm actually trying to kind of wean myself away from the computer, or from the painting a bit, because it consumed my life for a solid month, and while I've enjoyed it, it's definitely left me a little beat down. So, if I don't see you this evening, I'll see you again later. I am going to keep streaming in the morning, because it just gives me something to do. But, yeah, have a great rest of the day, and thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.